Picture this for a moment. You're lying in bed. Your phone screen lights up the dark. A video appears in your feed. The title reads, "Confirmed, this artist is an Illuminati member." You click on it. Then you click another, and another. Before you know it, the clock says 3 in the morning, and you're still staring at your screen, your brain drawing invisible lines between the eye at the top of a pyramid, a singer throwing up a triangle with their hands in a music video, and a politician's words stripped completely out of context. This is what millions of people do every single night. But before we dive deep into this mystery, let me ask you just one question. What if the most feared secret organization in human history actually lasted only 9 years and was shut down by a low-ranking government official in a tiny German state? Would you still be afraid of it? Because that's the truth. The Illuminati, you know, the organization that supposedly controls governments, pulls the strings of wars, and hides in every corner of the world, never existed that way. Not even close. But the really interesting thing isn't whether the Illuminati is real or not. The really interesting thing is, why do we want so badly to believe it is? Tonight, we're going back in time together, back to where this story actually started, to a room lit only by candlelight, smelling of ink, where a group of thinkers were whispering about a world that could be better. Go back to the evening of May 1st, 1776. In a dense forest near the town of Ingolstadt, in the region of Bavaria in what is now southern Germany, 5 men stood in the flickering light of torches. They weren't warriors, they weren't noblemen, they weren't wizards. They were simply young law students and the professor who taught them. The man standing at the center was only 28 years old. His face burned with determination. His dark eyes stared into the night, as though he could see something the others couldn't. His name was Johann Adam Weishaupt, professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt. That night, he and 4 like-minded companions founded an organization they called the Order of the Perfectibilists, later renamed to the word we all recognize today, the Illuminati, from the Latin word Illuminatus, meaning the enlightened, or one who has received the light of wisdom. To understand why Weishaupt felt he needed to build a secret society at all, you have to understand the world he lived in. Bavaria, at the time, was a land soaked in deep conservatism. The Roman Catholic Church held enormous power over education, over governance, over what ideas were acceptable and what ideas were dangerous. The university where Weishaupt taught had long been under the influence of the Jesuits. Although Pope Clement XIV had dissolved the Jesuit order just 3 years before the Illuminati was founded, Weishaupt himself was the first non-Jesuit in nearly a century to hold his professorship, and that made him a target. Across Europe, a wave of new thinking was rolling in from France and England. Thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Kant were shaking the foundations of old power, speaking of liberty, reason, and the rights of human beings as human beings, not as subjects of a crown. But in Bavaria, those ideas were still forbidden. Weishaupt wanted a space where he and his allies could discuss science, philosophy, and social reform openly, without fear of punishment. That was the original purpose of the Illuminati, not world domination, not a new world order, just a safe space for thinkers who felt suffocated by the intellectual cage of their era. The 5 founders each took code names drawn from antiquity. Weishaupt chose Spartacus, after the Roman slave rebellion leader, a name that said something about how he saw himself, the leader of those fighting the chains of ignorance. In the years that followed, the Illuminati grew far faster than Weishaupt had ever expected. By 1782, membership had reached around 600. By the end of 1784, it had surged to somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 members scattered across Europe, from Italy in the south to Denmark in the north, from Warsaw in the east to Paris in the west. Notable members included writers, philosophers, and nobles from across the continent. Some historians claim the list may have included Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the greatest poet and writer in German history, though whether he was a true member or simply an acquaintance of the organization remains debated. The man most responsible for expanding the group was Baron Adolf von Knigge, a diplomat and former Freemason who knew exactly how to build an organization. He designed a complex hierarchy of ranks, from novices through minivals up to the highest level called mystery. All communication within the group was coded. Cities and regions were given fictional names. Every member used a classical alias. That elaborate, secretive structure is exactly what later fueled people's imaginations about what the group must have been. But the truth that gets overlooked most often is this: the organization that looms so large in our imagination was completely destroyed just 9 years after it was founded. Internal conflicts were piling up. Weishaupt ran things like an autocrat, and Knigge, the man who had built so much of the organization with his own hands, grew increasingly frustrated and resigned in 1784. Former members who were unhappy started feeding information to the authorities. Some of it was true, some of it was bitter invention. Karl Theodor, the Elector of Bavaria, grew alarmed at the growing influence of secret societies. On June 22, 1784, he issued a decree banning all unauthorized secret societies. On March 2, 1785, he issued another decree that named the Freemasons and the Illuminati directly. Then came the bizarre twist that sealed everything. On July 10, 1785, lightning struck a priest named Johann Jakob Lantz while he was traveling. When authorities searched his body, they found secret Illuminati documents, member lists, orders to continue operating despite the ban. Arrests followed, documents were seized. Weishaupt was stripped of his professorship and fled Bavaria. He found refuge with Ernst II, Duke of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg, who sympathized with Enlightenment ideals. Weishaupt spent the rest of his life in the city of Gotha, writing books defending his ideas until he died in 1830 at the age of 82. After 1785, no historical record shows the Illuminati conducting any activity whatsoever. Historians are unambiguous. No trace of continued operations survives in the record. The organization people believe controls the world to this day ended like a college club that got shut down by the administration. So what kept the legend alive? That's the most interesting question of all, and the answer is more complicated than most people expect. It wasn't compelling evidence, it wasn't careful investigation, it was human psychology. Our need for an explanation for a world that feels chaotic and out of control. In a world where wars seem to break out for no reason, where the rich keep getting richer without limit, where justice feels distant and blurry, the belief that someone is holding the steering wheel, even if that someone is our enemy, offers a strange but genuine comfort. Because it means the world has order, has direction, has some hidden reason buried somewhere. The alternative, that nobody is holding the wheel, is far more terrifying. The Illuminati, as a legend then, isn't really a story about a mysterious group of people. It's a story about the human mind trying to find meaning in chaos. And it's a story about those who profit from keeping the rest of us lying awake in the dark, afraid. The real Illuminati of 1776 was a group of young thinkers in Germany who dreamed of intellectual freedom. They didn't control the world, they were just trying to change a small corner of it. Before the world sent police to kick down their doors and seize every book they owned. That's the truth. Everything that came after, the legends, the theories, the symbols, the fear, was built by human beings, layer upon layer, over more than 200 years. And in that act of building, every one of us has played a part. On the night of May 1st, 1776, the dense forest near the town of Ingolstadt in Bavaria was silent, as though the world itself was holding its breath. 5 torches trembled in the evening wind. The smell of pine resin and damp earth mixed in the air. 5 men stood in a circle on ground where the moonlight couldn't reach. They spoke in low voices, but the eyes of every one of them glittered, as though they had just discovered something the world didn't yet know. The youngest man in the group was only 28 years old, but that night he spoke as if he were carrying the entire weight of the world on his shoulders. His name was Johann Adam Weishaupt, and in that moment, the organization that would become the most feared legend in modern history was born. But to understand why a young man felt compelled to found a secret society in the middle of a forest in the dead of night, we have to go back further, to a small classroom in Ingolstadt, where an orphaned boy was first discovering the power of knowledge. Adam Weishaupt was born on February 6, 1748, in the city of Ingolstadt, Bavaria. His father was a law professor, but died when Weishaupt was only 5 years old. The boy who was left behind was taken in by his godfather, Johann Adam von Eichstätt, a privy councillor and professor at the University of Ingolstadt. Eichstätt was a man who believed deeply in the power of reason and philosophy. He raised his young ward to love reading, love asking questions, and to see the world through a thinker's eyes, not through the eyes of someone who simply obeys. But the institution where Weishaupt grew up was the complete opposite of everything Eichstätt had taught him. He was educated at a Jesuit school, the most powerful and strictly disciplined religious organization in Europe at the time. The Jesuits didn't just teach, they controlled which knowledge was worth passing on, which ideas were worth promoting, and which ideas needed to be crushed. A boy raised to love reason and questioning had no choice but to feel suffocated. Weishaupt earned his doctorate in law from the University of Ingolstadt in 1768, at just 20 years old. In 1773, he was appointed to the chair of canon law at that same university, a position that had been held by Jesuits for nearly a century. That made him an irritant, a thorn in the side of everyone who had previously held that power. He was watched, boxed out, quietly blocked at every turn. All of Europe in that period was entering what historians call the Age of Enlightenment. New ideas were sweeping the continent. The philosophy of reason and human rights was spreading everywhere. In France, Voltaire was openly mocking the church. Rousseau was arguing that man is born free and that society is what chains him. On the other side of the Atlantic, the American Revolution of 1776 was proving that Enlightenment ideals weren't just dreams on paper, they could actually be put into practice. But in Bavaria, those ideas were still considered dangerous. Anyone who spoke of freedom in public might be reported to the authorities by the church. University libraries kept banned books hidden in the back shelves, accessible only to a select few. A student who asked the wrong question in the wrong classroom might find their future closed off before it had even begun. Weishaupt saw this contradiction clearly. He wasn't opposed to religion itself. He was opposed to the way religion was being used as a tool of power to shut down human thought. He wrote that his goal was to liberate humanity from religious prejudice and political oppression and bring them toward universal happiness. But how could he do that in a world where every unorthodox idea was punished? His answer? Do it in secret. On the night of May 1st, 1776, Weishaupt and 4 of his law students founded the organization originally called the Order of the Perfectibilists. All 5 founding members took code names from antiquity. Weishaupt used Spartacus. Franz Anton von Massenhausen used Ajax. Max Edler von Merz used Tiberius. The other 2 used Erasmus and Agathon. The ceremony that first night was far simpler than anything imagination might conjure. No coffins, no skulls, no incantations, just an oath taken by torchlight, a pledge to support one another, share knowledge, and fight ignorance with the light of reason. The name Illuminati came later, after Weishaupt joined a Freemason lodge in Munich in 1777. Illuminati, from the Latin illuminatus, the enlightened, those who have received the light of wisdom. The name wasn't a claim of superiority over others. It was an expression of the desire to bring the light of knowledge and reason into a world still mired in darkness. In the early days, the organization was small and limited almost entirely to Weishaupt's own students. That all changed when a man named Baron Adolf Franz Friedrich von Knigge walked into Weishaupt's life in 1780. Knigge was a charismatic diplomat with wide connections, and crucially, he had been a Freemason. He knew how a secret society needed to be structured, how to recruit members, and how to maintain secrecy. He took the code name Philo and took charge of building the complex hierarchical system that gave the Illuminati its real organizational shape. The structure was divided into 3 main tiers. The lowest was the novices, new recruits who had to prove themselves before receiving deeper information. The middle tier included the Minervals and lesser Illuminati, who were trusted with more. The highest tier, called Mystery, included the ranks of priest, regent, magus, and king. Every member had a classical alias. Cities and regions on the map were given fictional names that didn't exist in reality. All communication was in complex cipher. Every letter looked ordinary on the surface while concealing a deeper message beneath. It was this very structure that later made people imagine the organization must have been extraordinarily powerful, because it had been designed to look mysterious from the very beginning. With Knigge's talent for recruiting through his Freemason network, the Illuminati grew far faster than Weishaupt had anticipated. From 5 men on the first night, it expanded to roughly 600 by 1782, and by the end of 1784, membership had climbed to between 2,000 and 3,000, spread across all of Europe, from Italy in the south to Denmark in the north, from Warsaw in the east to Paris in the west. Those who joined weren't just students or radical thinkers. The membership included nobles, lawyers, physicians, philosophers, and prominent writers from across the continent. Ernst II, Duke of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg, joined in 1783. Some historians claim Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, Germany's greatest writer, also appeared in the membership rolls, though this remains a matter of debate. The image of a secret society packed with the leading intellectuals of Europe was threatening enough to make those in power feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. But the truth that has to be acknowledged is this: the Illuminati was nowhere near as powerful as it appeared from the outside. Internally, Weishaupt ran things with a heavy hand. Knigge, the man who had done so much of the organizational work, grew increasingly frustrated with Weishaupt's approach to running things. Their disagreements built up until, in 1784, Knigge submitted his resignation and walked away from the organization he had helped build. The organization that looked so imposing from the outside was cracking from within. The Bavarian Illuminati was an organization of thinkers who dreamed of a better world. They believed in the power of the mind, in human rights, and in the idea that the darkness of ignorance could be defeated by the light of reason, not by the sword or by force. They weren't demons hiding in the shadows. They were human beings trying to light a candle in an age when those in power were extinguishing every flame they didn't control. Their dream was beautiful. But the world they lived in wasn't ready for it. There's a belief lodged deep in the minds of people all over the world that any organization powerful enough to control the world could never be so easily destroyed. But what if the truth was the exact opposite of what we believe? What if the organization that people have feared for over 200 years was brought down by something no one could have predicted? Not a military assault, not a betrayal by a double agent, but a bolt of lightning falling from the sky on an ordinary summer afternoon. And in the pocket of the man it struck, there were documents that would change everything forever. That is the true story of the fall of the Illuminati. Go back to 1784. The Illuminati was at the peak of its reach. Membership had climbed to between 2,000 and 3,000 across Europe. Their network had infiltrated several Freemason lodges. Some members held prominent positions at royal courts and universities. But in a private chamber in the Bavarian electoral palace, an old man was sitting with a report that made it impossible for him to remain idle any longer. Karl Theodor, Elector of Bavaria, was not a particularly strong ruler. Historians often describe him as hesitant and easily influenced. But when the clergy and the aristocrats in his court began whispering to him persistently that secret societies were growing beyond anyone's ability to control, he slowly tilted in the direction they were pushing. Reports flowing in claimed the Illuminati had infiltrated every corner of society. Officials in councils who were members were openly favoring their associates. The professorship at Ingolstadt that had once belonged to the Jesuits had been replaced by an Illuminati member. Rumors whispered of plans far bigger than what could be seen on the surface. Former members who had fallen out with Weishaupt began sending detailed accusations to the authorities, a mix of truth and venomous invention, but enough to convince Karl Theodor that it was time to act. On June 22, 1784, Karl Theodor issued a decree banning all unauthorized secret societies. The order didn't name the Illuminati directly, but its meaning was clear to everyone. Weishaupt and senior members tried to negotiate. They submitted a petition to Karl Theodor on February 24, 1785, claiming they had been misunderstood. The answer that came back was a new decree on March 2, 1785, this time naming the Freemasons and the Order of the Illuminati explicitly and unmistakably. The organization officially ceased operations in Bavaria, but some members were still moving in the shadows. Then, on July 10th, 1785, the sky above Bavaria darkened fast. Heavy rain swept in on the hot summer wind. A priest named Johann Jakob Lanz was travelling along a muddy road. He knew the storm was coming, but kept pushing forward as if he had an urgent errand that couldn't wait. No one knows what he was thinking when the lightning came. The bolt tore through the darkness and struck Lanz in an instant. No last words, no warning, just a blinding flash, a crack of thunder, and then silence. The officials who arrived at the scene found his body and what was in his pocket. What they found unraveled everything in a single moment. Inside the coat of the struck priest were secret Illuminati documents, member lists, instructions to continue operations despite the ban, text making it unmistakably clear that the organization had not actually stopped as it had claimed. Karl Theodor received the report and ordered arrests to begin immediately. The crackdown proceeded methodically. Senior members were taken into custody. The priest Jakob Anton Hertel was imprisoned, while others like Constanzo and Savioli Corbelli escaped by being expelled back to their home country of Italy. Some survived by betraying their fellow members. In 1786, police raided the home of Javier von Zwack, the former deputy head of the organization, in the city of Landshut, and found what they had been waiting for. The organization's cipher codes, monthly member calendars, the code names for various locations, and membership rolls going back to 1776. Those documents were published publicly so the world could see exactly what this organization really was. Some of the contents were genuinely sensational: recipes for invisible ink, plans for a women's branch of the organization, debates on topics considered deeply sinful in that era. But later scholars pointed out that most of it was philosophical debate among thinkers seeking a safe space, not the blueprint for overthrowing civilization. In August of 1787, Karl Theodor issued a third and harshest edict yet: the death penalty for anyone who remained a member of or assisted the Illuminati. With a punishment that severe, even those who wanted to resist had no choice but to give up. Throughout all this chaos, what was the man who had started everything doing? Weishaupt learned of the arrests and raids before the police reached him. He fled Bavaria in the middle of the night, leaving behind the university where he had spent over a decade building his career, leaving behind the organization he had nurtured with his dreams, and leaving behind the entire life he had built in Ingolstadt. He found shelter with Ernst II, Duke of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg, who had joined the organization in 1783 and still believed in the ideals of the Enlightenment even as the storm raged. Weishaupt spent all of his remaining years in the city of Gotha, not as the leader of a secret society, not as a shadowy power broker pulling the strings of the world, but as an aging writer sitting alone, penning books defending his own ideas to a world that wouldn't listen. He wrote A Complete History of the Persecutions of the Illuminati in Bavaria, A Picture of Illuminism, and An Apology for the Illuminati, hoping that someday people would understand what he had actually wanted. Every page he wrote carried the bitterness of a man who knew he had already been tried and convicted in the court of public opinion before anyone had heard a single word of his defense. That day never came in his lifetime. Johann Adam Weishaupt died on November 18, 1830, in the city of Gotha at the age of 82. He lived long enough to watch the name of the organization he created being used as the explanation for every conspiracy theory across Europe. He lived long enough to see his dream twisted beyond recognition. But he never had the power to stop it. After 1785, every major historical record, from the Encyclopedia Britannica to 21st century academic research, confirms clearly and consistently there is no evidence that the Bavarian Illuminati conducted any activity of any kind after that point. The surviving members scattered. Some returned to ordinary life. Some joined other organizations that were still operating. But as the Illuminati, they were finished, completely and permanently. Occasional false reports of the organization's revival reached Bavarian police through the early 1800s, but every investigation found only rumor, with nothing tangible to grab onto. An organization that lasted just 9 years, begun by 5 men in a forest, ended by a single lightning strike on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. No formal disbanding ceremony, no final testament ordering members to carry on, no secret documents hidden away to await resurrection. Only the silence of an institution crushed until it had nothing left, and the echo of a name that has kept ringing inside the minds of people for over 200 years, while the organization itself became nothing more than dust in the filing cabinets of history. This is the simple and quietly tragic ending of the real Illuminati. An organization born from the dreams of thinkers who wanted to change the world, and killed by a single bolt of lightning on a day no one saw coming. But while the organization itself died, its name was only just beginning to live, and it would live far longer and carry far more power than the real organization ever had. Because a name stamped with fear never dies easily. Paris, 1793. The streets were still wet with the smell of blood from the guillotine standing in the center of the Place de la Révolution. King Louis XVI's head had already fallen into the basket earlier that year, and for months now, France had been devouring itself in what historians call the Reign of Terror. The aristocracy was being executed one by one. The clergy were driven from their churches. Everything that had been called the Old Order was collapsing before the eyes of the entire world. There was only one question keeping Europe's ruling class awake at night. Who was behind all of this? The simple answer, that hungry, exhausted people who had suffered under oppression rose up, was not the answer Europe's elites wanted to hear. Because if that was true, then the same thing could happen to them. So they needed a different answer. And 2 men in 2 different countries were about to give it to them. Abbé Augustin Baruel was born in France in 1741. He was a Jesuit priest with a sharp pen and high ambition. When the French Revolution exploded, he fled the country and settled in London. There he had plenty of time, a deep fury at what was happening to his homeland, and a pen that was ready to write. In 1797, Baruel published a book titled Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. 4 dense volumes arguing that the French Revolution did not happen spontaneously. It was, he claimed, the result of a long-running conspiracy orchestrated by 3 forces: the Enlightenment philosophers, the Freemasons, and the Bavarian Illuminati. Baruel argued that all 3 groups had been working together for years to destroy the Church and the monarchies of Europe, and the French Revolution was the successful outcome of that plan. But there was one small detail Baruel neglected to mention in all those thick pages. By the time he wrote the book, the Illuminati had already been dissolved for more than 12 years. Hundreds of miles to the north, a man in Edinburgh, Scotland, was writing a book that reached a remarkably similar conclusion, without any knowledge of Baruel's work. John Robison was born in 1739, a professor of natural philosophy at the University of Edinburgh, a respected scientist, former secretary of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and a man who had travelled across Europe in his youth. During those travels, he encountered the world of Freemason lodges and other secret societies that were common across the continent, and what he saw left a lasting mark of unease in his mind. In 1797, the same year as Baruel, completely independently, Robison published a book titled Proofs of a Conspiracy Against All the Religions and Governments of Europe. It presented a strikingly similar conclusion that secret societies, especially the Illuminati, were the hidden force behind the political upheaval sweeping Europe. Robison claimed to have received secret documents from inside the organization and to have spoken with former members, but when later historians examined those sources, most could not be verified. The fact that two men in two countries who didn't know each other published books reaching the same conclusion in the same year made readers of the time feel this couldn't possibly be a coincidence. Something had to be true. But that very similarity actually points in the opposite direction. If two people who didn't know each other arrived at the same conclusion, it's more likely they were drawing on the same social anxieties as their raw material, not that they independently discovered the same truth. To be fair to both men, though, they weren't inventing things from nothing. Baruel and Robison had both experienced the world of European secret societies firsthand, and much of what they observed wasn't imaginary. The Illuminati had been real. It had genuinely infiltrated Freemason lodges. Some of its members had genuinely held political positions, and the documents seized from Xavier von Zwack's home did show that the organization had maintained a genuinely complex network. The problem wasn't that they lied. The problem was that they connected the dots in ways the evidence didn't support. An organization dissolved in 1785 was linked to a revolution that broke out in 1789. Philosophers who wrote liberal essays were tied to revolutionary groups that used violence, and Freemasons, most of whom were moderate businessmen and nobles, were lumped in with a grand conspiracy to topple every monarchy in Europe. Baruel later received a letter from an Italian military officer named Joseph Maria Simonini, claiming to have proof that Jewish people were behind everything. Baruel kept the letter private, but it showed just how dark the directions his theories were taken by others. Both books spread rapidly, not because scholars of the time confirmed their accuracy, but because they met a deep human need. Imagine you are a Prussian nobleman, an Austrian priest, a wealthy English merchant, reading the news from France every day. The king executed, aristocrats murdered, churches burned. Everything you believed was permanent is coming apart. That kind of fear doesn't want a complex explanation. It doesn't want a sociological analysis about how feudal systems had oppressed the poor for generations until it finally broke. That fear wants an enemy with a name, a face, and something that can be fought or eliminated. And the Illuminati was perfectly positioned to play that role. In America, the books by Robison and Baruel crossed the Atlantic quickly and generated no small amount of panic in a society that had just emerged from its own revolution a few years earlier. The newly independent nation was still acutely sensitive to threats from outside, and the spectacle of France devouring itself alarmed many American leaders deeply. In 1798, a preacher named Jedediah Morse delivered a sermon in a church in Charleston, Massachusetts, claiming to have evidence that the Illuminati was operating on American soil. His congregation listened in fear and belief, because a prominent minister doesn't say such things without some basis in truth, or so they assumed. President George Washington himself received a letter warning him of the danger of the Illuminati, and he wrote back that he did not believe the organization had significant influence in America. But the very fact that a sitting president had to address the subject at all showed how far the panic had already traveled, from a forest near Ingolstadt to the offices of Washington, D.C., in just a few years after the organization had already ceased to exist. The greatest impact of Barruel and Robertson was not the truth they revealed. It was the pattern of thinking they created, a pattern that would haunt the world for more than 200 years. The pattern has a fixed structure. When a frightening or rapidly destabilizing event occurs, people don't look for boring, complicated causes, systemic economic failures, accumulated inequality, slowly building social forces. They look for a secret group with faces, names, and a plan. Because a visible enemy is less terrifying than chaos that no one controls. And time after time, the name reached for is the Illuminati. Barruel died in 1820. Robertson died in 1805. Both left this world believing they had exposed a great truth. They had no way of knowing that what they had actually built was not an exposé, but a construction. They had built a new legend on the ruins of an organization that had long since died. And that legend would outlast every book they ever wrote, outlast every reputation they ever built, outlast every ideal they ever held. A legend built from fear and anger is far harder to destroy than the very thing it claims to fight. The real Illuminati took 9 years to build, but the image that Barruel and Robertson created took far less time to build a legend that has lasted for more than 2 centuries, and that still lives today in every YouTube video and every internet thread asking, "Who are the Illuminati?" That is the legacy they left the world, not by intention, but through the question that will never expire. San Francisco, 1965. Cigarette smoke hung heavy in a bowling alley. Jazz drifted in from the next room. The table between 2 men was covered in empty beer bottles and sheets of paper filled edge to edge with handwriting. One man was Gregory Hill, the other was Kerry Thornley. They were building a new religion from scratch, specifically to mock every religion that already existed. And that night, they had no idea that what they intended as a joke would become the foundation of the modern Illuminati myth, believed with dead seriousness by millions of people 60 years later. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what America felt like in the 1960s. The Vietnam War was grinding on. Tens of thousands of young people were being sent to die in the jungles of Southeast Asia for reasons the government couldn't explain clearly. The assassination of President Kennedy in 1963 had left a wound in the American psyche that hadn't healed. The Warren Commission's conclusion that a lone gunman acted alone was one many people simply refused to accept, especially as people who might have known something kept dying under mysterious circumstances. Then in 1968, the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy in the same year deepened the feeling that something invisible was pulling the strings behind all of these events. In that atmosphere of distrust, the idea that a secret group was controlling the world wasn't fringe thinking. It felt more plausible than the official explanations. Gregory Hill and Kerry Thornley saw all of this and decided to do what people of their generation did when they were fed up with the system: mock it. What they created that night was the Principia Discordia, a slim book first printed in 1965 that declared itself the sacred text of a religion they invented called Discordianism, a religion that worshipped Eris, the goddess of chaos, and held as its first principle that everything human beings believe is orderly is actually chaos that's been managed to look orderly. The book was printed on a photocopier in just a few hundred copies, distributed among friends. It was reprinted many times without permission, something Hill and Thornley said they were perfectly fine with, because in Discordianism, copyright contradicts the spirit of chaos itself. Thornley also wrote a pile of fake letters to Playboy magazine, claiming that a secret organization called the Illuminati was controlling the world. He wrote in a convincing, detailed, deadpan voice just to see if people would believe it. Some of the editors and readers did. Both men felt thrilled and horrified at exactly the same time. But the person who took those seeds of chaos and grew them into a full-sized tree was Robert Anton Wilson, writer, philosopher, and someone a few people have called the most dangerous satirist of the 20th century. Wilson was born in 1932. He was a man who had read an extraordinary amount: philosophy, psychology, physics, and every form of conspiracy theory that had ever existed. He worked as an editor at Playboy in the 1960s, and he was the one who read Thornley's fake Illuminati letters first. Wilson didn't believe the letters, but he recognized them as fascinating raw material. He contacted his colleague Robert Shea, and the two of them began working on what they described as the longest, most convoluted, and most all-encompassing satirical novel ever written. The result was the Illuminatus trilogy, 3 novels published in 1975, The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, and Leviathan. The Illuminatus trilogy was deliberately hard to read. The story jumped between time periods and character perspectives without warning. Politics, philosophy, science, sexuality, and conspiracy theories were all mixed together on purpose. Wilson built a system he called Fnaudism, the premise that every event in history was secretly connected by the Illuminati pulling the strings behind the scenes. But here's what most people missed. Wilson wasn't writing to prove the Illuminati was real. He was writing to mock exactly that kind of thinking. The characters in the book find clear evidence that the Illuminati is behind everything, and then find equally clear evidence that it isn't. Both sets of evidence are just as credible. Wilson's point was to show that the human brain is designed to find patterns, find meaning, find connections, even in things that have no pattern, no meaning, and no connection. He wanted readers to laugh at themselves, not to be afraid. But the world doesn't always read books the way the author intended. The Illuminatus trilogy sold especially well among the counterculture crowd. Students, activists, and people who questioned authority in every form. The book presented a system that explained everything with details that sounded real and referenced actual historical events that readers already knew. The problem was that some readers read only the parts they wanted and skipped the parts where Wilson was laughing at himself. Characters like Hagbard Celine, an Illuminati leader who operated from a submarine, became icons for a whole generation. The details of the hierarchical system and elaborate rituals that Wilson invented for his novel were later cited in subsequent conspiracy books as actual truth. And when 2 decades passed and the internet arrived, The details from this satirical novel became so thoroughly mixed with actual conspiracy theories that they could no longer be separated. Wilson himself never stopped talking about this. He gave interviews throughout his life, clearly stating that the Illuminati in his work was satire, not reality. He repeated again and again that he wrote the book to help people break free from conspiracy thinking, not to fuel it. Wilson died in 2007 at the age of 74, celebrated by the literary world as a pioneering writer, but remembered by most ordinary people for the Illuminati legend he had specifically intended as a joke. But a legend that's been released doesn't wait for its creator to explain it. Thornley faced unintended consequences of a far more personal and painful kind. He was called in for questioning by Kennedy assassination investigator Jim Garrison as a suspect, because Thornley had known Lee Harvey Oswald back when they served in the military together, and had later written a novel featuring a character resembling Oswald years before the assassination. The man who had originally mocked conspiracy theories became the subject of one himself. His later years were filled with paranoia and isolation. He died in 1998, poor and alone. This is what happens when the joke grows bigger than the person who made it. Wilson and Thornley didn't build the modern Illuminati legend from nothing. They built it on soil that Barruel and Robertson had tilled since 1797, with decades of conspiracy theories from 2 world wars, the Cold War, and unsolved assassinations, fertilizing that ground into something rich and deep. What Wilson and Thornley did was give that shapeless fear a clear form. Give it a name, give it a structure, give it details that could be grabbed and held. And once fear has a shape, it spreads far faster and far further than it did before. Through the 1980s and 90s, pop culture absorbed the image of the Illuminati from the Illuminatus trilogy with enthusiasm. Board games, video games, films and music all picked up the eye in a pyramid symbol and used it as shorthand for mystery and hidden power, with many creators not even knowing the symbol had originated in a satirical novel published in the 1970s. What started as a joke became the shared language of global paranoia. And that language was waiting for a tool far more powerful than anything Wilson, Thornley, or even Barruel could have imagined in their worst nightmares. Because what it took a generation in the 1960s years to spread, through books, letters, and word of mouth, the world 40 years later would be able to spread in an instant. And when that moment came, no one would remember that all of it had started with 2 men sitting in a bowling alley in the middle of the night, laughing at the world. Picture a room with mirrors on every wall. When you say something, the sound bounces back to you, again and again, getting louder every time, getting clearer every time, until eventually you forget that the sound started with you, and you begin to believe it's a truth confirmed by the entire world from every direction at once. But in reality, you're alone in that room, with your own voice. That's what the internet created for every conspiracy theory in existence, including the Illuminati. And it didn't happen by accident. Go back to the 1990s, when the internet first opened its doors to the general public. Conspiracy theorists were among the first to see its potential. Before that, someone who believed in the Illuminati or other conspiracy theories often felt alone, because most people in their real-world lives didn't believe the same things. The internet changed all of that. Early chat rooms and online forums became gathering points for people who had always felt like they were thinking alone in the world. They found each other. They shared information. They connected dots. They reinforced one another. What had once been a private belief that had to be kept quiet became a community that grew larger every day. But the step that truly changed the game came in the 2000s, when social media and video sharing platforms arrived. The problem was never that the internet gave conspiracy theories space, because the internet gives equal space to everything. The problem was how those platforms decided what to show you next. At the heart of each platform was what's called a content recommendation algorithm, working on a simple premise: whatever keeps you on the platform longer is the best thing to show you. And what keeps human beings on a screen longest isn't accurate and boring information. It's content that triggers strong emotion, anger, fear, excitement, or the feeling that you're accessing information other people don't have. Conspiracy theories hit every one of those buttons perfectly. In the early 2010s, Illuminati videos began spreading across major video sharing platforms. The most popular format was pointing out hidden symbols in music videos by famous artists, a particular hand gesture, a lighting choice in a scene, a quick flash of the eye in a pyramid in a single frame, and interpreting these as proof that the artist was a member of or sponsored by the Illuminati. What made this content so compelling was that it was about celebrities those viewers already knew and followed. Viewers had a personal reason to keep watching, and when they finished, they were likely to share it with others who followed the same artists. The algorithm read those signals and began recommending more of the same. Similar videos, progressively more intense, more exciting, each time someone finished watching one. The process researchers call radicalization by increment means viewers don't jump straight to the most extreme content. They start with something that seems reasonable enough and are gradually led into more and more extreme territory without realizing it's happening. What makes this process especially powerful is the psychological phenomenon researchers call the echo chamber. Once the algorithm learns what kind of content you're interested in, it shows you more and more of it, while hiding content that contradicts your existing beliefs. The result is that you begin to see a world where everyone around you agrees with you, where every new piece of information confirms what you already believe, and where no one disagrees. This isn't the reality of the world. It's a picture the algorithm constructs to keep you on the platform. Inside the echo chamber, theories that would have sounded bizarre begin to feel completely normal, because you're seeing dozens and then hundreds of people talking about them in exactly the same way, with no dissenting voice loud enough to break through. Researchers who study online behavior have identified a pattern they call the endless chain of connection that occurs constantly in online conspiracy communities. It starts with one verifiable fact. Say, large corporations have influence over politics. Then it connects to a harder-to-verify conclusion, that these corporations secretly coordinate with each other. Then it leaps to a conclusion with no evidence at all, that all of this is directed by the Illuminati. But inside the echo chamber, every step of that chain feels natural and logical, because the community around you is confirming each step together, and no one pauses to ask whether there's actually any evidence. There's another technique worth noting, one that online conspiracy content creators use constantly, which researchers call false connective bridges. The technique takes two real facts and places them side by side, then builds a connection between them that sounds natural, even though the connection doesn't actually exist. For example, it's true that an eye in a pyramid symbol appears on the dollar bill. And it's true that a group of very wealthy people have tight social networks. But taking those two true things and concluding that the Illuminati controls the global financial system is not true. It's just placing two dots next to each other and letting the viewer's brain draw the line connecting them. And the human brain draws that connecting line eagerly every single time. In 2012, several well-known actors and musicians had to publicly deny being Illuminati members, a situation that sounds almost absurd, but was necessary because the online pressure was intense enough to affect their public image and their personal safety. Some artists were harassed online, received threatening messages, and were followed by people who believed they were part of a plan to control the world. A belief that had started as a satirical novel in the 1970s, spread through early internet chat rooms in the 1990s, had now grown into something with real consequences for real people. But something important needs to be said in fairness. Not everyone who watches Illuminati videos online becomes a true believer. Many people watch for entertainment, because it's fun to interpret hidden symbols, because it gives the same excitement as reading a mystery novel, and those people know exactly what they're watching. The problem lives at the boundary, the place where entertainment content blends into content that's genuinely trying to reshape beliefs. And the algorithm doesn't distinguish between the two. It only sees how long you watched and whether you hit the like button. In a world before the internet, beliefs like this required actual effort to pursue. You had to go to a bookstore, subscribe to a newsletter, join a specific group. Those costs filtered out the genuinely curious from the merely momentarily intrigued. But once the cost shrank to swiping a finger across a screen, everything changed completely. The Illuminati of the 21st century internet is not what Weishaupt created, not what Bavarian accused it of being, not even what Wilson constructed as a joke. It's something rebuilt every single day, by an algorithm with no intentions beyond keeping you on screen 1 minute longer, and by content creators who know full well that fear sells better than truth every single time. The eye in a pyramid symbol designed in 1776 by a designer who had never heard of the Illuminati is searched on the internet millions of times per day, visible on the bill in everyone's wallet, on the phone that the algorithm will use to guide you to the next theory the instant you finish this one. The echo chamber was never built by any single person. It grew on its own, from a system designed to hold attention, meeting a fear that had been accumulating for over 200 years. And no one controls it. No secret society, no mysterious plan. Just a machine doing exactly what it was designed to do. And human beings with the same fears they've always had throughout history. This is the deepest irony of the whole story. The thing conspiracy theorists fear most is being controlled by an invisible power. But what's actually controlling their thinking isn't a secret organization with a 200-year history. It's an algorithm that's less than 20 years old, with no face, no name, no underground headquarters, and no intention beyond keeping you on screen for 1 more minute. Then 1 more, then 1 more. Without end. Picture a room. Not a mysterious underground chamber, not a meeting room for shadowy power brokers hiding behind a dark curtain. Just an ordinary room, could be in an apartment building anywhere in the city. A computer monitor casts blue light across the face of a man sitting alone in the dark. On the screen, a line of numbers is climbing without stopping. View counts, subscriber counts, and ad revenue trickling in dollar by dollar until it adds up to a pile far larger than anyone expected. The man is smiling. He just uploaded a video titled "Hard Proof that the Illuminati is behind this singer." And within a few hours, hundreds of thousands of people have streamed in to watch it, share it, and comment on it in a state of alarm. Other people's fear is his gold, and he knows it. This is what a fear merchant actually looks like. In a world where Illuminati stories spread without borders, there's always one question worth asking yourself before anything else. Who benefits from our fear? The answer to that question might make you uncomfortable, because the people who benefit aren't wearing black robes in secret rooms. They exist in places we see every day, and sometimes we're the ones making them richer, without ever realizing it. Start with the group closest to most of us: online content creators. Since the world entered the age of social media and video sharing platforms, conspiracy content has become one of the best-selling products out there. The reason is simple. The algorithms of these platforms are designed to capture and hold attention, and nothing captures attention more effectively than fear, mystery, and the feeling that you're discovering a truth that's been hidden from ordinary people. When a viewer clicks on an Illuminati video, the platform counts how long they stay on screen. That data is used to recommend the next video, something similar in theme or more intense or more thrilling. It's a cycle with no exit. The content creator gets paid through ads. The platform gets watch time. The viewer gets the excitement they wanted. Everyone seems satisfied. Except the truth, which gets buried under thousands, tens of thousands of pieces of distorted information. What's more, many of these creators don't even believe what they're saying. They simply know what sells. They see the revenue numbers spike every time they put Illuminati in a video title. So they run the same formula again and again until it becomes a genuinely sustainable industry. Think about what happens if you search the word Illuminati on a major video platform tonight. You'll find thousands, tens of thousands of results. Every single one claims to have evidence. Every single one claims to have discovered a truth others don't know. Every single one has an ad playing every few minutes. That money doesn't go anywhere mysterious. It flows directly into the pockets of people who figured out that our curiosity is a resource that never runs dry. But if you think fear merchants are only the content creators in dark rooms, you're not seeing the full picture. Because there's another group that has long mastered the use of conspiracy theories as a tool, and they're not in it for ad revenue. They're in it for political power. Throughout modern history, politicians and influential public figures have repeatedly picked up Illuminati stories and other conspiracy theories to use as weapons in political battles. The technique is subtle and highly effective. Whenever the public starts asking serious questions about economic inequality, unfair distribution of wealth, or policies that benefit a small group of people, a well-timed conspiracy theory gets released into the public conversation. To redirect attention, to get people angry at an invisible enemy instead of at policies they can actually touch and examine. This isn't a story unique to any one country. It happens again and again in many parts of the world. The pattern is always recognizable. The constructed enemy might look different each time, sometimes unnamed elites, sometimes a group defined by their identity, sometimes the Illuminati pulling strings from behind the scenes. But the function is always the same. Give people someone to blame without touching the people who actually hold power. Picture this. While millions of people are staring at their phone screens, analyzing music videos frame by frame, searching for hidden triangle symbols, asking whether a singer's gesture carries a secret meaning, at that exact same moment, a tax bill quietly passes through Congress designed to benefit large corporations. An environmental protection regulation gets quietly repealed. An accountability mechanism that should have been activated gets quietly dropped because public attention is somewhere else entirely. This is the real-world consequence of being consumed by conspiracy theories. Not just wasted time, but the erosion of our ability to watch the power that's standing right in front of us. Psychologists have called this phenomenon cognitive load. When our brains are running at full capacity, solving puzzles that don't actually exist, there's no energy left for the questions that should be asked. We burn ourselves out arguing about symbols on currency, with nothing left to argue about why the wealth gap between the richest and the rest keeps growing wider every year. And there's a third group of beneficiaries that tends to be overlooked most often. Parts of the media industry that understand perfectly well that mystery sells better than fact. When media covers conspiracy theory content, whether to promote it or to criticize it, the outcome is usually the same: higher viewership, more ad revenue, and emotionally charged conversation that brings people back. Fear and mystery are products that never go out of style, as long as humans still have minds that want to believe they know something other people don't. But here's what's worth noticing about all of this. The most successful fear merchants don't lie completely. They always blend in some portion of truth, because it's exactly that portion of truth that makes people believe. Secret organizations do exist in the real world. People in power really do coordinate behind closed doors. Back-channel influence really does happen in documented cases. But taking those real things and mixing them with invented stories to build a theory that explains everything at once, that is the technique that traps people and makes it so hard to get out. Once we believe that the Illuminati is behind everything, we no longer have to understand complex systems. We don't have to learn monetary policy or political power structures or tax law or how the banking system works, because everything is explained by one answer: a mysterious group of people who planned it all in advance. The simplicity is seductive, but it's a trap. The smirk of satisfaction on the faces of those who benefit from this belief is not on top of any pyramid printed on a dollar bill. It's on the face of a politician who sees that the public's anger is pointed in the wrong direction. It's on the face of a content creator watching view counts climb every day. It's on the face of everyone who has discovered that other people's fear can be converted into profit without much difficulty at all. Conspiracy theories don't reveal the hidden truth. They blind us to the truth that's standing right in front of us. The real power in this world isn't hidden inside secret symbols. It's in contracts already signed, laws already passed, systems already running out in the open, but too complex to easily understand. And in our own indifference, which allows all of it to keep going unchallenged. Maybe the most frightening question isn't whether the Illuminati is real. Maybe it's how we let ourselves be led away from more important questions, and how much longer we're willing to let fear built by others control the way we see the world. Fear that's been planted with skill can build a cage more secure than any iron bars, because that cage is invisible. We build it around ourselves voluntarily, with no one forcing us, and with no key that can unlock it. Except the choice to question what we've decided to believe, and the courage to face the complexity of this world with our own eyes, plainly and honestly. The fear merchants will stay in business for as long as we keep buying what they're selling. But the day we stop buying is the day we start seeing the world more clearly than ever before. Philosophers have been asking one question for centuries, and nobody has a complete answer to this day. Is this world controlled by some invisible force, or is it just spinning on its own momentum, with no one truly holding the wheel? That question sounds philosophical, but which answer we choose to believe affects everything in our lives. It determines who we get angry at, who we trust, who we vote for, and what we spend our waking hours on this earth looking for. The real Illuminati, founded by Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria in 1776, was not a demonic organization running the world. It was a small club of forward-thinking intellectuals who wanted a safe space to debate ideas that were forbidden in their time. They were completely swept away in just 10 years, and they vanished from history without a trace. But their name didn't vanish. That name was resurrected 3 times. First as a scapegoat for the French Revolution, second as dark comedy by rebellious writers of the 1960s, third as a product that sells in the internet age. Every time the name was picked up, it wasn't used to reveal truth. It was used to serve the purposes of whoever was holding it. That is the truth this black box contains. But stopping there wouldn't be quite complete, because there's something that goes deeper than simply debunking a conspiracy theory. The real question is, why do we want to believe these things in the first place? Psychologists have found that human beings have a natural tendency to search for patterns in what appears to be randomness. We see faces in wood grain. We find meaning in coincidences. We build narratives to connect dots that aren't naturally connected. This ability was enormously useful in ancient times. It helped our ancestors survive in a world full of danger. Spotting something off before it became a threat was a life-saving skill. But in a modern world that's complex and overflowing with billions of pieces of information, that same instinct becomes a double-edged sword. We use it to link symbols on a dollar bill to global control. We use it to see hidden plans in music videos. We use it to believe that everything that happens in this world must have someone behind it who intentionally planned it all. Psychologists call this tendency the tendency to see patterns where none exist. When we see clouds in strange shapes, the brain says it's a face. When 2 events happen close together, the brain says they must be connected. And when the world looks chaotic and hard to understand, the brain begins searching for a narrative that organizes the chaos into something that feels meaningful. Conspiracy theories are the narratives our brains construct to escape the feeling of helplessness in a world that's too complicated. Believing that way offers a strangely comforting feeling, because if someone is controlling everything, it means the world isn't actually as chaotic as it looks. If there's some grand plan behind it all, it means our suffering didn't happen by accident. It has meaning. It's part of a bigger story we just don't know yet. And somehow, that makes it more bearable. But the truth that's more frightening than that is, this world might have no one holding the wheel. This world might be full of unmanaged chaos, full of flawed leaders making bad decisions, full of unintended consequences from good or bad policies alike, full of inequalities that grew out of structures accumulating over hundreds of years, with no shadowy superpower overseeing any of it. That truth is hard to accept, because it means we might have no one to blame except a system too complicated to easily understand, and ourselves as part of that system. But it also means something else. If there is no all-powerful force dictating everything, then we're not as powerless as we think. What each of us does matters. What each of us says counts. And real change doesn't require waiting for someone to reveal the world's deep secret. It happens when people start paying attention to what's actually happening and do something about it in ways that can be felt. This is the saddest legacy conspiracy theories leave behind for those who believe in them wholeheartedly. They turn people who might have stood up and changed something real into people who sit and analyze symbols instead. They redirect the energy that should be questioning identifiable power toward enemies that don't exist. They trap legitimate outrage at real injustice in a loop that can never lead to change. None of this means the world is transparent or just. Real conspiracies do happen. Real cover-ups exist. People in power really do collaborate for their own benefit. Decisions really are made that affect millions of lives without any public input. These things have verifiable evidence, named individuals, documented records, and journalists and scholars working to bring them into the light. The difference between genuine investigation and conspiracy theory lives right there. A conspiracy theory requires no evidence. It explains everything with a single name, and whenever contradictory evidence appears, it gets incorporated as further proof of the cover-up, making the belief impossible to argue against with any information whatsoever. Think about what happens when you tell a committed Illuminati believer there's no supporting evidence. The answer you almost always get back is, that's exactly the proof of how well they've hidden it. That's the most airtight logical trap possible, because it turns the absence of evidence into evidence itself. Every counter-argument becomes confirmation, and every person who disagrees gets added to the conspiracy too. A belief that cannot be proven wrong is not knowledge, it is religion. And the most ironic thing of all is that the original Illuminati, as an organization, was founded specifically to fight against superstition and belief not grounded in reason. Weishaupt wanted human beings to use their intellect and evidence to judge the world, not inherited stories. The fate of his name being turned into a symbol for the very superstition he spent his life fighting is both tragic and darkly funny at the same time. It's as if history is playing its cruelest joke on the man. After opening this black box all the way, what we find inside isn't a list of shadowy powers, no map of world domination, no secret code that unlocks an explanation for everything. Inside is only a mirror, and in that mirror we see our own faces, our own fears, our own desire to believe the world has more order than it does. And we see exactly how ready we are to hand over the responsibility of understanding the world to a story that asks nothing of us except belief. The real question isn't whether the Illuminati is real. The real question is, how do we choose to see the world? Between seeing it in a way that's comfortable or seeing it plainly, Between having a clear enemy we can never catch, or facing a complexity we can touch but struggle to fix. Between waiting for someone else to reveal the truth, or getting up and questioning and investigating ourselves. This world does have genuine injustice. People really do abuse power. Systems really do need scrutiny and change. But all of that requires clear eyes, not eyes clouded by theories built to sell. And it requires energy pointed in the right direction, not energy drained away by a cycle of suspicion that never ends. This box is now closed, but what's inside hasn't gone anywhere. It's just begun working inside your mind. And I hope it works in the right direction. Not the direction that leads us circling through our own shadows, but the one that leads us toward the light of real understanding. Weishaupt once dreamed of bringing enlightenment to the world through the power of the mind. He failed in his own lifetime. But maybe his dream isn't finished yet. It's just waiting for someone ready to carry it forward, with eyes open wide enough to see the truth, and brave enough to stay with it, even when it isn't as exciting as something invented. See you in the next one. Take care.